The alarm clock rang at 6 in the morning. Sarah opened her eyes and took a deep breath. Another busy day was starting. She reached over and turned off the alarm, then sat up in bed. The house was quiet, but not for long. She walked down the hallway and opened the first bedroom door. Her daughter Maya was still asleep, her dark hair spread across the pillow. Sarah gently shook her shoulder. "Time to wake up, sweetie," she said softly. Maya groaned and pulled the blanket over her head. Sarah smiled. This happened every morning. "Come on, Maya, you have school today. We cannot be late again." She moved to the next room where her son Jordan was already awake. He was 7 years old and always full of energy. He was sitting on his bed, playing with his toy soldiers. "Good morning, Jordan. Go brush your teeth and get dressed," Sarah told him. "Okay, Mom," Jordan said, jumping off his bed. Sarah went downstairs to the kitchen. She had exactly 1 hour to make breakfast, pack 2 lunches, sign a permission slip she forgot about yesterday, and get everyone out the door. She was an Army colonel with 20 years of service. She had led soldiers in difficult situations. She had made important decisions under pressure. But getting 2 kids ready for school on a Tuesday morning felt like the hardest mission of all. She pulled out bread, peanut butter, and jelly. She made sandwiches quickly, her hands moving fast. Then she grabbed 2 apples, 2 juice boxes, and some crackers. She put everything into 2 lunch bags. One had Maya's name on it, the other had Jordan's name. The coffee maker beeped. Sarah poured herself a cup and took a sip. She needed this. She had an important briefing at the military base at 10 o'clock. She was giving a presentation to several high-ranking officers. She had prepared for days. "Everything had to be perfect, Mom. I cannot find my homework." Maya's voice came from upstairs. Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. She put down her coffee and went upstairs. Maya was standing in her room, still in her pajamas, looking worried. "Where did you last see it?" Sarah asked. "I don't know." "I did it last night, but now it's gone," Maya said. Her eyes were filling with tears. Sarah looked around the messy room. She saw clothes on the floor, books on the desk, and toys everywhere. She started looking through the papers on Maya's desk. Finally, she found the homework under a coloring book. "Here it is. Now please get dressed." "We need to leave in 30 minutes, Sarah said. She went back downstairs. Jordan was already in the kitchen wearing his school uniform. But his shirt was buttoned wrong and his shoes were on the wrong feet. "Let me help you," Sarah said. She fixed his shirt and helped him switch his shoes. Then she made him sit down and eat his cereal. Sarah looked at the clock. 25 minutes left. She ran upstairs to get dressed. She put on her uniform quickly. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her uniform was neat and clean. Her hair was pulled back tight. She looked like the professional soldier she was. But inside she felt rushed and stressed. Maya finally came downstairs. She was dressed, but her hair was a mess. Sarah quickly brushed it and put it in a ponytail. She handed Maya a granola bar. "Eat this in the car. We are running late," Sarah said. She grabbed the 2 backpacks, the 2 lunch bags, her briefcase, and her car keys. Jordan and Maya put on their shoes. Sarah opened the front door and everyone rushed out. The morning air was cool and fresh. Sarah took a deep breath as she walked to her black SUV. She unlocked the doors and the kids climbed in. She helped them buckle their seatbelts, then got in the driver's seat. She started the car and backed out of the driveway. The elementary school was only 10 minutes away, but the drop-off line was always crazy. Parents rushing, kids running, cars everywhere. Sarah had seen it many times before. As she drove through the neighborhood, she thought about her day. After dropping off the kids, she would go straight to the base. She would have time to review her presentation one more time before the briefing. Everything was planned out. "Mom, did you sign my permission slip?" Maya asked from the back seat. Sarah's heart sank. The permission slip. She forgot to sign it. It was still sitting on the kitchen counter. "I forgot, sweetie. I am sorry. I will sign it tonight and you can turn it in tomorrow," Sarah said. "But Mom, the field trip is on Friday. The teacher said we need to turn it in today," Maya said. Sarah felt frustrated with herself. She was so organized at work. She could plan military operations with hundreds of soldiers, but she kept forgetting simple things at home. The permission slip. The parent-teacher conference last month. Jordan's show and tell last week. "I will call the school later and explain. It will be okay," Sarah promised. They were getting close to the school now. Sarah could see the line of cars ahead. The drop-off zone was already packed with vehicles. Parents were trying to get their kids out quickly. Some cars were double parked. Some were blocking the street. Sarah joined the line of cars. They moved slowly, inch by inch. She looked at the clock on her dashboard. It was already 8:15. School started at 8:20. They were going to be late. Come on, Sarah whispered to herself. Jordan was playing with his backpack straps. Maya was looking out the window at her friends walking into the school building. Sarah tapped her fingers on the steering wheel. Finally, they were getting close to the drop-off area. But then the car ahead of them just stopped. It did not move. Sarah waited. Still nothing. Other cars behind her started honking. The driver ahead got out of his car. His car had broken down right in the middle of the drop-off lane. "You have got to be kidding me," Sarah said under her breath. She looked around. There was a space to the right near the side of the building. It had a sign that said, "No stopping." But Sarah had seen other parents use it before when the line was blocked. It was just for a few seconds. Just to let the kids out quickly, she made a decision. She pulled her SUV around the stopped car and into the space near the building. She put the car in park and turned around. "Okay, guys, out you go. Quickly," she said. Maya and Jordan unbuckled their seatbelts and grabbed their backpacks. Sarah handed them their lunch bags. She got out and opened the back door to help them out. "Have a great day." "I love you both," Sarah said, giving them each a quick hug. "Love you, Mom," they both said. She watched them run toward the school entrance. Maya's ponytail bounced as she ran. Jordan's backpack was almost as big as he was. Sarah smiled. They were good kids. She got back in her car and pulled away from the curb. She merged back into the traffic, leaving the school. She felt relieved. They made it. The kids were not too late. Now she could focus on getting to the base. But then she saw something in her rearview mirror that made her stomach drop. Red and blue lights were flashing behind her. A police car was right on her tail, its lights bright even in the morning sun. Sarah's hands gripped the steering wheel tighter. Her heart started beating faster. She put on her turn signal and carefully pulled into a nearby parking lot. The police car followed her. She put her car in park and turned off the engine. She placed her hands on the steering wheel where they could be seen. "This was what you were supposed to do." She had taught her kids this. Always be calm. Always be respectful. Always follow instructions. But as she watched the police officer get out of his car in her side mirror, she felt a knot forming in her stomach. She had a bad feeling about this. Sarah sat in her car and waited. She could see the police officer in her side mirror. He was walking toward her vehicle slowly. He was a white man, maybe in his 40s. He wore sunglasses even though the sun was not very bright. His face looked serious and angry. Sarah took a deep breath. She had done nothing wrong. Well, almost nothing. She had stopped in a no-stopping zone for maybe 20 seconds. But that car was broken down in the middle of the drop-off lane. What was she supposed to do? Make her kids late? Block all the other cars? The officer reached her window. He did not smile. He did not look friendly at all. "License and registration," he said. His voice was hard and cold. "Yes, sir," Sarah said politely. She reached slowly for her purse. "I am reaching for my wallet now." She had learned this in a training session on the base. Always tell the officer what you are doing. Move slowly. Keep your hands where they can see them. Do not make sudden movements. She pulled out her wallet and opened it. Inside was her driver's license and her military ID. Both were clearly visible. Her military ID had her photo, her rank, and the word Colonel printed on it in bold letters. She also reached over to the glove box. She moved slowly and carefully. She pulled out her car registration and insurance card. "Here you go, sir," she said, handing everything through the window. The officer took the documents from her hand. He barely looked at them. He seemed more interested in looking at her than looking into her car. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" he asked. "I believe it was because I stopped briefly in the no-stopping zone. I apologize for that, sir. There was a broken-down car blocking the drop-off lane, and I needed to let my children out for school." "I was only stopped for a few seconds," Sarah explained. Her voice was calm and respectful. "A few seconds. I watched you." "You were parked there," the officer said. He was looking at her license now, but his eyes kept moving back to her face. "I understand, sir. I made a mistake. I was just trying to get my kids to school on time," Sarah said. "Is this your car?" the officer asked suddenly. Sarah was surprised by the question. Of course it was her car. Her name was on the registration he was holding in his hand. "Yes, sir. That is my car." The registration is right there, she said, pointing to the papers in his hand. Where are you heading now? He asked. I am going to work, sir. I work at the military base, Sarah said. The officer looked at her military ID for the first time, but he only glanced at it for a second. Then he looked back at her with suspicious eyes. You work at the base? He asked. His tone suggested he did not believe her. Yes, sir. I am an Army colonel. I have a briefing this morning, Sarah said. She was starting to feel uncomfortable. This was not a normal traffic stop. She had been pulled over once before, years ago, for speeding. That officer had been professional and quick. This was different. Step out of the vehicle, the officer said. Sarah's heart started pounding harder. Step out? For a parking violation? This did not make sense, sir. May I ask why you need me to step out? Sarah asked. She kept her voice polite and calm, but inside she was getting worried. Just step out of the vehicle, ma'am, the officer said again. This time his voice was louder and more aggressive. Sarah unbuckled her seatbelt slowly. She opened the door and stepped out. She was wearing her Army uniform. It was clean and pressed. Her rank was clearly visible on her shoulders. Her name tag was on her chest. She looked every bit the professional soldier she was, but the officer did not seem to care. He was looking at her like she was a criminal. Is there a problem, officer? Sarah asked. She was standing next to her car now. Other cars were driving past them. Some people were slowing down to look. Sarah felt embarrassed and confused. Where did you get this car? The officer asked. I bought it 3 years ago. From a dealership. Everything is legal and registered, Sarah said. And where did you get that uniform? He asked, pointing at her clothes. Sarah could not believe what she was hearing. Where did she get her uniform? She earned it. She spent 20 years serving her country. She had been deployed overseas. She had led hundreds of soldiers. She had received medals and commendations, and this officer was asking her where she got her uniform as if she had stolen it from a store. Sir, I am a colonel in the United States Army. This is my uniform. I have served for 20 years, Sarah said. Her voice was still calm, but there was a slight edge to it now. A lot of people claim to be military, the officer said. Some people steal uniforms. Some people pretend to be soldiers when they are not. Sarah felt anger rising in her chest. She pushed it down. She could not show anger. She could not raise her voice. She knew how this could go. She had seen the news. She knew what happened to people who got angry during traffic stops, especially people who looked like her. Officer, my identification clearly shows my rank and my assignment. I can provide additional information if you need it. I can give you the phone number of my commanding officer if you would like to verify my identity, Sarah said. The officer walked around her car slowly. He was looking in the windows. He was looking at the back seat. Sarah had some papers there, some gym clothes, and a duffel bag with some of her military equipment. What is in that bag? The officer asked, pointing at the duffel bag. Those are my work items, sir. Some equipment I need for my job, Sarah said. Open the bag, the officer said. Sir, with all respect, is that necessary? I was stopped for a minor parking violation. I have provided all my documentation. Everything is in order, Sarah said. She knew her rights. She knew that for a simple traffic stop, the officer did not have the right to search her vehicle without probable cause, but she also knew that arguing about rights during a traffic stop could make things worse. I said open the bag, the officer repeated. His hand moved to his belt near his weapon. Sarah felt a chill go down her spine. This was escalating for no reason. She was a respected Army officer. She was a mother. She was a law-abiding citizen. And she was being treated like a criminal because she stopped in a no-stopping zone for 20 seconds. Cars continued to drive past. Sarah noticed that some were slowing down. Some people were looking. She saw one woman in a minivan holding up her phone. She was recording. Good, Sarah thought. Let them record this. Let them see how I am being treated. Sir, I will open the bag, but I want to state clearly that I am cooperating fully with your request even though I believe it is unnecessary, Sarah said. She walked to the back door of her car and opened it. She pulled out the duffel bag and unzipped it. Inside were some papers, a notebook, a water bottle, and some military manuals. Nothing illegal. Nothing suspicious. The officer looked inside the bag. He picked up one of the manuals and flipped through it. Then he put it back. Where do you really work? He asked. I really work at the military base, sir. As I have stated multiple times, Sarah said. Her patience was wearing thin. People like you always have an excuse, the officer said quietly. But Sarah heard it clearly. People like you. There it was. The real reason for this stop. It was not about the parking violation. It was not about her car or her uniform. It was about her skin color. It was about the assumptions this officer was making based on how she looked. Sarah had experienced racism before. In the military, in stores, in restaurants. She had learned to deal with it. She had learned to stay calm, to be professional, to take the high road. But this was different. This officer had power over her right now. He had a gun. He had authority. And he was using that power to harass her. Officer, I have answered all your questions. I have provided all documentation. I have cooperated with every request. Is there anything else you need? Sarah asked. Her voice was steady, but inside she was shaking. Before the officer could answer, another police car pulled into the parking lot. Sarah saw it from the corner of her eye. The officer must have called for backup. For what? For a parking violation? For a woman in an army uniform trying to get to work? The second police car parked behind the first one. Another officer got out. This one was older, maybe in his 50s. He had sergeant stripes on his uniform. He walked over with a curious expression on his face. What do we have here? The sergeant asked. The first officer turned to look at the sergeant who had just arrived. His name tag said Davies. Sarah read it carefully. She wanted to remember his name. Traffic violation at the school drop-off. Stopped in a no-stopping zone. Officer Davies said to the sergeant. The sergeant looked at Sarah, then at her car, then back at Officer Davies. He seemed confused about why backup was needed for a simple traffic violation. Okay, the sergeant said slowly. His name tag said Williams. He looked at Sarah with a more neutral expression than Officer Davies. Ma'am, can you tell me what happened? Sarah was glad to explain to someone who seemed more reasonable. Yes, sir. I was dropping my children off at school this morning. There was a car broken down in the middle of the drop-off lane. To avoid blocking other cars and to get my children to school on time, I briefly stopped in a space marked as a no-stopping zone. I was there for less than 30 seconds. I let my children out safely and then left immediately. Sergeant Williams nodded. He seemed to understand. This was not a big deal. Parents did things like this at school drop-offs all the time. It was a minor violation at most. And Officer Davies pulled you over for that? Williams asked. Yes, sir. And then he asked me to step out of my vehicle. He questioned whether this was my car, whether my uniform is real, and asked me to open my personal bag, Sarah said. She kept her voice factual, just stating what happened. Sergeant Williams looked surprised. He glanced at Officer Davies with a questioning look. Then he looked at Sarah's military ID, which Davies was still holding. You are a colonel? Williams asked Sarah. Yes, sir. I have served in the Army for 20 years. I am currently assigned to the base here. I was on my way to work when I was pulled over, Sarah explained. Williams took the ID from Davies and looked at it more carefully. He studied it for a long moment. His expression changed. He looked uncomfortable now. He glanced at Davies again, and this time his look was not just questioning. It was concerned. Officer Davies, can I speak with you for a moment? Williams said. It was not really a question. It was an order. The two officers walked back toward their patrol cars. Sarah could not hear what they were saying, but she could see them. Davies was talking with his hands, gesturing toward Sarah and her car. Williams was shaking his head. He looked frustrated. He kept pointing at Sarah's military ID. Sarah stood by her car and waited. More cars were passing by now. More people were watching. She saw at least 3 people with their phones out, recording. One of them was the woman in the minivan from earlier. She had parked across the street and was filming everything. Sarah looked at her watch. It was almost 9 o'clock. Her briefing was at 10. She needed to get to the base. She needed to prepare. This traffic stop was taking way too long for something so minor. The two officers talked for about 5 minutes. Finally, they walked back toward Sarah. Sergeant Williams looked apologetic. Officer Davies looked angry. His jaw was tight and his face was red. Ma'am, I apologize for the delay, Williams said to Sarah. His tone was completely different from Davies. He was professional and respectful. This is a very minor violation. Normally, we would just give a warning for something like this, especially given the circumstances with the broken-down car. Thank you. Sir, Sarah said. However, Williams continued, Officer Davies has already initiated the stop, so I am going to write you a warning ticket. Just a warning, no fine. It will not go on your record, Sarah nodded. A warning was fine. She could accept that. She did technically stop in a no-stopping zone, even if it was only for a moment and even if there was a good reason. I understand. Thank you, Sarah said, but she was not done. She had been pulled over for a minor traffic violation and treated like a criminal. She had been questioned about whether her car was really hers. She had been asked where she got her uniform as if she had stolen it. She had been forced to open her personal belongings. All of this while she was clearly wearing a military uniform with her rank clearly visible. Williams went back to his patrol car to write up the warning. Officer Davies stood near Sarah's car, not looking at her. The tension in the air was thick. Sarah made a decision. She was not going to let this go. She had rights. She had dignity. And she had a responsibility to speak up, not just for herself, but for everyone else who might be treated this way by Officer Davies in the future. Officer Davies, Sarah said. Her voice was calm but firm. He looked at her with cold eyes. Can I have your badge number, please? Sarah asked. It is on the warning ticket, he said shortly. I would like it now, please, Sarah said. He stared at her for a long moment. Then he reached up and touched his badge. He rattled off a number quickly. Sarah pulled out her phone and typed it into her notes app. She typed slowly and carefully, making sure she got every digit correct. Thank you, Sarah said. And I would like the contact information for your supervisor. Officer Davies's face got redder. That will also be on the warning ticket. I would like it now, Sarah repeated. She was not being rude. She was not being aggressive. She was simply exercising her rights as a citizen. Davies clenched his jaw. He pulled out a business card from his pocket and handed it to her. Sarah looked at it. It had the name and phone number of the police department's watch commander. At that moment, Sergeant Williams came back with the warning ticket. He handed it to Sarah. Here you go, ma'am. Again, I apologize for the inconvenience, Williams said. Sarah took the ticket and looked at it. It listed the violation as stopping in a no-stopping zone. The fine amount said $0. It was just a warning as promised. But then Sarah looked at Officer Davies again. She thought about how he had treated her, how he had looked at her, the things he had said. People like you always have an excuse. Those words were burned into her mind. Sergeant Williams, I want to file a formal complaint, Sarah said clearly. Williams looked surprised. Davies looked furious. A complaint? About what? Davies said, his voice rising. About your conduct during this traffic stop, Sarah said, looking directly at Davies. You questioned whether my car was mine, even though my name is on the registration. You questioned whether my military uniform was real, even though my military ID was clearly visible. You forced me to open my personal belongings for a minor parking violation, and you made a comment about people like me always having excuses. I never said that, Davies said quickly. Yes, you did, Sarah said. And there are witnesses. She gestured toward the street where several people were still watching and recording on their phones. The woman in the minivan across the street called out, I got it all on video. I heard what he said. Another car had stopped. A man in a suit got out and walked over. I saw the whole thing, he said. I am a parent at the school. I saw this officer pull her over right after she dropped off her kids. She was only stopped for a few seconds to let her children out, because there was a broken-down car blocking the lane. We all do it when there is an emergency like that. More people were gathering now. Another parent, a woman with her child in the back seat, rolled down her window. I saw it too. This is ridiculous. She did nothing wrong. Sarah felt a strange mix of emotions. She was embarrassed that all these people were watching, but she was also grateful. They were supporting her. They were witnessing what happened. She was not alone. Sergeant Williams looked around at all the people. He looked at Officer Davies. He looked at Sarah. He sighed deeply. Ma'am, I will take your complaint. If you would like, you can come to the station and file a formal report. Or I can take your statement now, Williams said. I will come to the station, Sarah said, but I want to make a statement now as well. For the record, Williams pulled out a small notebook. Go ahead, Sarah took a deep breath. She was still standing in a parking lot in her army uniform. She was still holding a warning ticket for a minor traffic violation. But now she was going to tell her story. She was going to speak up about what happened to her, I am Colonel Sarah Henderson. I have served in the United States Army for 20 years. This morning I dropped my children off at school. Due to a broken-down vehicle blocking the designated drop-off lane, I briefly stopped in a no-stopping zone to allow my children to exit safely. I was stopped for approximately 20 to 30 seconds. I understand this is a minor violation and I accept responsibility for it. She paused and looked at Officer Davies. He was staring at the ground, his face still red. However, Sarah continued, after I was pulled over, I was treated with suspicion and disrespect by Officer Davies. Despite providing my driver's license, registration, insurance, and military identification, he questioned whether the vehicle was mine. He questioned whether my uniform was legitimate. He ordered me out of my vehicle and demanded that I open my personal belongings. During this interaction, he made a statement suggesting that people like me always have excuses. I believe I was racially profiled and that this traffic stop escalated far beyond what was appropriate for a minor parking violation. Williams wrote quickly in his notebook. When Sarah finished, he looked up at her. Is there anything else you want to add? Yes, Sarah said. I want it noted that several civilians witnessed this interaction and recorded it on their phones. I would like their contact information included in the report, if they are willing to provide it. But inside she felt shaken. She felt angry. She felt sad. And most of all, she felt determined. She was not going to let this go. She was going to see this through to the end. Sarah walked into the military base building 20 minutes late. Her heart was still pounding from the traffic stop. She carried her briefcase in one hand and her notes in the other. She needed to focus now. She needed to put aside what just happened and do her job. The briefing room was on the second floor. Sarah climbed the stairs quickly. When she opened the door, she saw about 15 officers already seated. Her commanding officer, General Mitchell, was at the front of the room. He looked at her and nodded. Colonel Henderson, glad you could join us, he said. His tone was neutral, not angry. My apologies for the delay, sir, Sarah said. She walked to the front of the room and set down her briefcase. The briefing went well despite her late arrival. Sarah had prepared thoroughly. She talked about logistics, training schedules, and resource allocation. The other officers asked questions and she answered them confidently. For 45 minutes, she was focused entirely on her work. She did not think about Officer Davies or the traffic stop or the complaint she had filed. But when the briefing ended and the other officers left the room, General Mitchell asked her to stay. Close the door. Please, he said. Sarah closed the door and turned to face him. General Mitchell was in his early 60s. He had gray hair and kind eyes. He had been in the Army for almost 40 years. Sarah respected him greatly. Tell me what happened this morning, he said, sitting down in one of the chairs. Sarah sat down across from him. She told him everything. The broken-down car at school, the brief stop in the no-stopping zone, Officer Davies pulling her over, the questions about her car and her uniform, the comment about people like you, the way the situation escalated, the witnesses, the news crew, the formal complaint. General Mitchell listened without interrupting. His face grew more serious as she talked. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment. I am sorry that happened to you, he said finally. No one should be treated that way, especially not one of our officers. Thank you, sir, Sarah said. I want you to know that you have the full support of this command. If you need time to deal with this situation, take it. If you need legal assistance, we can provide it. If you need to talk to someone, we have counselors available, General Mitchell said. Sarah felt tears starting to form in her eyes. She blinked them back. She did not want to cry. Not here, not now, but the General's kindness and support touched her deeply. I appreciate that, sir. I think I just need to see this through. I need to make sure the complaint is taken seriously, Sarah said. It will be. I will make some calls myself. I know people in the city police department. I will make sure they understand who you are and what you represent, General Mitchell said. Sarah shook her head. Sir, with respect, that is exactly the problem. It should not matter who I am or what rank I hold. Every citizen should be treated with respect during a traffic stop. Every person should have their rights protected. I do not want special treatment because I am a colonel. I want fair treatment because I am a human being. General Mitchell smiled slightly. You are right, of course. But unfortunately, we do not live in a perfect world. Sometimes we have to use the power and influence we have to make things right. Sarah understood what he meant. She had power and influence that most people did not have. She could use it to hold Officer Davies accountable. And by doing so, maybe she could help other people who did not have the same advantages. "What are you going to do now?" General Mitchell asked. "I am going to the police station this afternoon to give my formal statement. I am going to make sure this is documented properly. And then I am going to follow up to make sure there is a real investigation," Sarah said. "Good. Keep me informed. And remember, you are not alone in this," General Mitchell said. Sarah left the general's office and went to her own workspace. She had some paperwork to finish before she could leave for the police station. But she found it hard to concentrate. Her phone kept buzzing with messages. Her best friend from college had sent her a text. Someone had shared the news story online and it was spreading quickly. Sarah opened her phone and searched for her name. The video was everywhere. Local news websites had posted it. It was on social media. People were commenting and sharing it. Some comments were supportive. "This is terrible. She served our country and this is how she gets treated," one person wrote. "Racial profiling at its worst," another person commented. But there were also negative comments. "She broke the law and wants to play the race card," someone wrote. "Cops have a hard job. Stop making it harder," another person said. Sarah closed her phone. She did not want to read the comments. She knew that not everyone would understand or support her. That was okay. She was not doing this for popularity. She was doing it because it was right. At 2 o'clock that afternoon, Sarah drove to the police station. It was a large brick building downtown. She had never been inside before. She walked through the front doors and approached the front desk. "Hello, I am Colonel Sarah Henderson. I am here to file a formal complaint and give a statement," she told the officer at the desk. The officer looked at her for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Captain Rodriguez is expecting you. Please have a seat and someone will be with you shortly." Sarah sat down in the waiting area. There were other people there too. A woman with a crying baby, an older man reading a newspaper, a teenager with his mother. After about 10 minutes, a detective came out. She was a black woman, probably in her 40s. She had short hair and wore a gray suit. "Colonel Henderson? I am Detective Harris. Please follow me," she said. Sarah followed her down a hallway and into a small interview room. There was a table, a few chairs, and a recording device on the wall. "Please sit down," Detective Harris said. "Can I get you some water or coffee?" "Water would be nice." "Thank you," Sarah said. Detective Harris left and came back with a bottle of water. She set it on the table and sat down across from Sarah. "First, I want to say that I'm sorry about what happened to you this morning. I have reviewed the initial report and spoken with the witnesses. I have also watched the video that was recorded," Detective Harris said. "Thank you," Sarah said. "I am going to record this interview. Is that okay with you?" Detective Harris asked. "Yes, that is fine," Sarah said. Detective Harris turned on the recording device. She stated the date, time, and the names of everyone in the room. Then she looked at Sarah. "Please tell me in your own words everything that happened this morning," she said. Sarah took a deep breath and started from the beginning. She talked about the morning rush with her kids, the broken-down car at school, her decision to briefly stop in the no-stopping zone, Officer Davies pulling her over. Every detail, every question he asked, everything he said, the way he looked at her, the way he made her feel. Detective Harris listened and took notes. She asked questions for clarification, but mostly just let Sarah talk. "You mentioned that Officer Davies said, 'People like you always have an excuse.' Can you tell me more about that?" Detective Harris asked. "Yes, I had just explained to him why I stopped where I did. I told him about the broken-down car and needing to get my children to school. And he said those words, 'People like you always have an excuse.' The way he said it, the way he looked at me, it was clear what he meant. He was not talking about parents or military officers. He was talking about black people," Sarah explained. Detective Harris nodded. "Did he make any other comments that suggested racial bias?" "Not directly. But his entire demeanor was hostile from the start. He questioned whether my car was mine. He questioned whether my uniform was legitimate. He treated me like a criminal for a minor parking violation. I have been pulled over before years ago for speeding. That officer was professional and quick. This was completely different," Sarah said. The interview lasted almost an hour. Detective Harris asked about every detail. She asked about witnesses. She asked if Sarah had any prior interactions with Officer Davies. She asked how Sarah felt during the stop. When they were finished, Detective Harris turned off the recording device. Thank you for coming in and giving your statement. This will be part of the official investigation. Internal Affairs will also be conducting their own investigation into Officer Davies' conduct, Detective Harris said. What happens next? Sarah asked. The investigation will take some time. We will interview all the witnesses. We will review all the video evidence. We will look at Officer Davies' history to see if there are any patterns of similar behavior. Once the investigation is complete, there will be a hearing. You will be notified of the results, Detective Harris explained. How long will this take? Sarah asked. It depends. Could be a few weeks. Could be a few months. I know that is frustrating, but we want to be thorough, Detective Harris said. Sarah stood up. I understand. Thank you for taking this seriously. Of course. And Colonel, just between you and me, I'm glad you are speaking up about this. Too many people stay quiet because they do not want the hassle or they are afraid. But change does not happen when people stay quiet, Detective Harris said. Sarah smiled. Thank you. That means a lot coming from you. She left the police station feeling better than when she arrived. Detective Harris seemed professional and thorough. The investigation seemed like it would be real and not just for show. Sarah drove home. When she pulled into her driveway, she sat in her car for a moment. She looked at her house. It was a nice house in a nice neighborhood. She had worked hard for this life. She had served her country. She had raised her children. She had done everything right. But this morning, none of that mattered to Officer Davies. All he saw was her skin color. All he saw was his own prejudice and assumptions. Sarah got out of her car and walked to her front door. She unlocked it and went inside. The house was quiet. The kids were still at school. They would be home in about an hour. She needed to figure out what to tell them. Sarah changed out of her uniform and into comfortable clothes. She made herself a cup of tea and sat at the kitchen table. She had about 40 minutes before the school bus would drop off Maya and Jordan. She needed to think about what to say to them. Should she tell them what happened? They were young. Maya was only 10 and Jordan was 7. But they were smart kids. They watched the news sometimes. They knew about racism. They had asked questions before about why some people were treated differently because of their skin color. Sarah had always tried to be honest with them while also protecting their innocence. She did not want them to grow up afraid or angry. But she also did not want them to be naive about the world they lived in. Her phone rang. It was her mother. Hi, Mom? Sarah answered. Sarah, I just saw the news. Are you okay? What happened? Her mother's voice was full of concern. Sarah had not called her mother yet. She had been too busy dealing with everything else. Now she told her mother the whole story. That officer should be ashamed of himself, her mother said angrily. After everything you have done for this country. After all your service and sacrifice. And he treats you like that. I know, Mom, but I am handling it. I filed a complaint. There is going to be an investigation, Sarah said. Good. You make sure they hold him accountable. Do not let this go, her mother said firmly. I won't, I promise, Sarah said. They talked for a few more minutes. Her mother asked about the kids, about the briefing, about what the police department said. Finally, Sarah heard the school bus outside. Mom, I have to go. The kids are home, Sarah said. Okay, baby. Call me later. I love you, her mother said. Love you too, Sarah replied. She hung up and went to the front door. Maya and Jordan came running up the driveway with their backpacks bouncing on their shoulders. Mom! Mom, we heard about what happened! Maya said as soon as she came through the door. Sarah's heart sank. You heard? How did you hear? Some kids at school were talking about it. They said their parents told them. They said a police officer was mean to you, Maya explained. Jordan looked worried. Is it true, Mom? Did a policeman be mean to you? Sarah knelt down so she was at their eye level. She took both of their hands. Come sit with me. Let me tell you what happened, she said. They all sat on the couch together. Sarah put her arms around both children. She told them the story in a way they could understand. She explained about the broken-down car. She explained about stopping briefly in the wrong spot. She explained about being pulled over. The police officer asked me some questions that were not very nice. He did not believe that our car was really ours. He did not believe that my uniform was real. He treated me like I had done something very wrong, even though I only made a small mistake, Sarah explained. But why would he do that? Maya asked. Sarah paused. This was the hard part. Well, sometimes people make judgments about other people based on how they look. Do you remember when we talked about racism? Maya nodded. When people treat someone badly because of their skin color. That is right. I think that is what happened today. I think the police officer treated me the way he did because I am black, Sarah said. Jordan's eyes got wide. But that is not fair. No, it is not fair. You are absolutely right, Sarah said. What are you going to do about it? Maya asked. I filed a complaint with the police department. That means I told his bosses what he did. They are going to investigate, which means they are going to look at what happened and decide if he should be punished, Sarah explained. Will he get in trouble? Jordan asked. I hope so, but I do not know for sure. Sometimes these things take time, Sarah said honestly. Maya was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Mom, I am proud of you for standing up for yourself. Sarah felt her eyes fill with tears again. She pulled both children close and hugged them tight. Thank you, baby. That means everything to me, she whispered. That evening, after dinner and homework and baths, Sarah tucked both kids into bed. She read them a story like she did every night. When she turned off the light and kissed them goodnight, Maya had one more question. Mom, if a police officer stops us when we are older, what should we do? Maya asked. Sarah sat back down on the edge of the bed. This was an important question. Always be respectful and polite. Do what they say. Do not argue. Keep your hands where they can see them. If they ask questions, answer them calmly. And remember, you have rights. You have the right to ask why you were stopped. You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to have a parent or lawyer with you. But you did all those things and the officer was still mean, Maya said. I know, and that is why I am fighting back. That is why I filed a complaint. Because it is not right, and we have to speak up when things are not right, Sarah said. The next few weeks passed slowly. Sarah went to work every day. She continued with her normal routine. But the incident was always in the back of her mind. The news story had spread beyond the local area. National news outlets picked it up. Sarah received interview requests from television shows and newspapers. She agreed to a few interviews. She wanted to tell her story. She wanted people to understand what happened. In one interview with a national morning show, the host asked her, Some people are saying that you are making this into a bigger deal than it needs to be. It was just a parking violation. What do you say to those people? Sarah looked directly into the camera. I say that they are missing the point. Yes, I committed a minor parking violation. I accept responsibility for that. But what happened after that was not about the parking violation. It was about how I was treated. It was about the assumptions that were made about me. It was about racial profiling. And if we do not speak up about these things, they will continue to happen. She received thousands of messages on social media. Most were supportive. People shared their own stories of being racially profiled. People thanked her for speaking up. But some messages were hateful and cruel. She tried not to read those. 3 weeks after the incident, Sarah received a call from Captain Rodriguez, Colonel Henderson. I wanted to update you on the investigation, he said. Yes, please, Sarah said. Her heart was pounding. We have completed our internal investigation. We interviewed all the witnesses. We reviewed all the video evidence. We also looked into Officer Davies's history. This is not the first complaint against him. There have been 3 other complaints in the past 2 years, all from people of color, all alleging inappropriate conduct during traffic stops, Captain Rodriguez explained. I see, Sarah said. Based on our findings, Officer Davies has been suspended without pay for 30 days. He will also be required to complete bias training and sensitivity training. He will be on probation for 1 year. If there are any more incidents, he will be terminated, Captain Rodriguez said. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Part of her wanted to feel satisfied. Part of her wanted to feel like justice had been served. But 30 days of suspension did not seem like enough. Not for someone who had multiple complaints. Not for someone who had treated her and others so badly. Is that all? Sarah asked. Captain Rodriguez sighed. I understand your disappointment. Believe me, I wish we could do more. But according to our union contract and department policies, this is the maximum punishment we can give for a first sustained complaint. But you said there were other complaints, Sarah said. Yes, but those complaints were not sustained. There was not enough evidence in those cases. Your case is different because of the video evidence and the multiple witnesses. Captain Rodriguez explained. So basically, until there is video evidence, officers like Davies can continue to treat people badly, Sarah said. She was getting angry now. I know this is frustrating. I am frustrated too. But we are working on policy changes. We are implementing body cameras for all officers. We are improving our training programs. We are taking this seriously, Captain Rodriguez said. I hope so, Sarah said. After she hung up the phone, Sarah sat for a long time. She felt disappointed but also determined. This was not over. Officer Davies had been punished, but not enough. She could push for more. She could talk to the mayor. She could talk to the police chief. She could keep speaking up until real change happened. A few days later, Sarah received a letter in the mail. It was from the police department. It was an official apology signed by the police chief himself. The letter said, Dear Colonel Henderson, on behalf of the entire police department, I want to apologize for the incident that occurred on November 10th. Your treatment during that traffic stop was unacceptable and does not reflect the values of our department. We are committed to serving all members of our community with respect and professionalism. We are taking steps to ensure that incidents like this do not happen again. Thank you for your service to our country. Sarah read the letter twice. It was something. It was an acknowledgement. But words on paper were not enough. She needed to see real action. She needed to see real change. That weekend, Sarah was invited to speak at a community meeting about police reform. The meeting was held at a local church. Over 200 people attended. Sarah stood at the podium and looked out at the crowd. She saw people of all ages and races. She saw the parents from the school who had witnessed the traffic stop. She saw members of her military unit who had come to support her. She saw people she had never met before who just wanted to hear her story. She took a deep breath and began to speak. Thank you all for being here. 3 weeks ago, I was pulled over for a minor parking violation. What should have been a simple interaction turned into something much more. I was questioned, searched, and disrespected, and I believe it happened because of my skin color. The crowd was silent, listening to every word. I am here today not just to tell my story, but to call for change. Real change. Not just apologies and promises, but action. We need body cameras on all police officers. We need better training programs that address racial bias. We need accountability when officers act inappropriately. And we need to rebuild trust between the police and the communities they serve. People began to nod and some started to applaud. I know that most police officers are good people who want to serve their communities. But we cannot ignore the problems that exist. We cannot stay silent when we see injustice. We have to speak up. We have to demand better, and we have to work together to create change. When she finished speaking, the entire room stood and applauded. People came up to her afterward to shake her hand and share their own stories. Sarah listened to each person. She exchanged contact information with community leaders and activists. This was bigger than just her traffic stop now. This was about a movement. This was about making sure what happened to her did not happen to anyone else. 2 months had passed since the traffic stop. It was a cold January morning, and Sarah was out for her regular run on the military base. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange. Her breath came out in white clouds as she ran along the familiar path. Running always helped her think. As her feet hit the pavement in a steady rhythm, she reflected on everything that had happened since that Tuesday morning in November. Officer Davies had completed his 30-day suspension and was back on duty. Sarah had heard through Captain Rodriguez that Davies was no longer working in the school zone area. He had been reassigned to a different district. It was not the outcome Sarah had hoped for, but it was something. The police department had followed through on some of their promises. All officers now wore body cameras. The department had also implemented new training programs focused on implicit bias and community relations. Sarah had even been invited to speak to a group of officers about her experience. That had been difficult but important. The school had also made changes. The principal had apologized personally to Sarah for the confusion in the drop-off zone. They had installed new clearer signs. They had also created an emergency protocol for when cars broke down in the drop-off area. Parents now had a designated space they could use in such situations, and it was clearly marked. But perhaps the most significant change was happening at the state level. A local representative had contacted Sarah after seeing her story on the news. Together, they had been working on legislation that would require all police departments in the state to track and report data on traffic stops, including the race of the driver and the reason for the stop. The goal was to identify patterns of racial profiling and hold departments accountable. The bill was moving through the state legislature now. It had strong support. Sarah had testified at several hearings. She had told her story over and over again to committees and lawmakers. It was exhausting, but it felt meaningful. Sarah finished her run and walked back to her car. She checked her phone. There was a message from Karen, the woman in the minivan who had recorded the traffic stop. Karen had become a friend over the past 2 months. She had attended the community meetings with Sarah. She had signed petitions. She had spoken to other parents about the importance of standing up against injustice. The message said, "Saw the news this morning." The bill passed the first committee vote. "We are one step closer." Sarah smiled and texted back, "That is great news. Thank you for all your support." When Sarah got home, Maya and Jordan were already awake and eating breakfast. They were talking excitedly about something. Mom, guess what?" Jordan said as soon as Sarah walked in. "What?" Sarah asked, pouring herself a cup of coffee. "Our teacher said that you are going to come talk to our class about being brave," Maya said. Sarah had forgotten about that. A few weeks ago, the school counselor had asked if Sarah would be willing to talk to some classes about courage and standing up for what is right. Sarah had agreed, but she had been so busy that she forgot it was scheduled for today. "That is right. I am coming to your school this afternoon," Sarah said. "Will you tell them about the police officer?" Jordan asked. "Maybe, if it is appropriate." "We will see," Sarah said. That afternoon, Sarah drove to the elementary school. She walked into Maya's classroom first. The students all turned to look at her. Maya was sitting in the front row, smiling proudly. "Good afternoon, everyone. I am Colonel Henderson. I am Maya's mom, and I am also a soldier in the United States Army," Sarah began. She talked to the children about courage. She explained that courage was not just about being brave in war or dangerous situations. Courage was also about standing up for what is right, even when it is hard. Courage was about speaking the truth even when people might not want to hear it. Courage was about defending yourself and others even when you were scared. "A couple of months ago, something happened to me that was unfair," Sarah told the children. "I had to decide whether to stay quiet and just let it go or whether to speak up. It would have been easier to stay quiet, but I knew that if I stayed quiet, the unfair thing might happen to someone else. So I spoke up." A little girl raised her hand. "Were you scared?" "Yes, I was scared. But I did it anyway." That is what courage is. It is not about never being scared. It is about doing the right thing even when you are scared, Sarah said. After talking to Maya's class, she went to Jordan's class and gave a similar talk. The children asked wonderful questions. Some asked about her military service. Some asked about what happened during the traffic stop. One little boy asked, "Do you still feel scared when you see police officers?" Sarah thought carefully about how to answer that question honestly but appropriately for a 7-year-old. That is a good question. I think the experience made me more cautious. But I also know that most police officers are good people who want to help. One bad experience does not mean all police officers are bad. What I learned is that we should always expect to be treated with respect. And if we are not treated with respect, we should speak up, Sarah explained. When the school day ended, Sarah picked up Maya and Jordan as usual. As they drove home, Maya said, "Mom, my friend Emma said her mom thinks you are a hero." Sarah glanced at Maya in the rearview mirror. "I am not a hero, sweetie. I am just someone who stood up for herself." "But that is what heroes do," Maya said simply. Sarah smiled. Maybe her daughter was right. Maybe heroism was not just about big dramatic actions. Maybe it was also about the small everyday acts of courage. The decision to speak up. The decision to demand better. The decision to use your voice for change. A few weeks later, Sarah received a phone call from the state representative she had been working with. "Colonel Henderson, I have good news. The bill passed both chambers. It is going to the governor's desk. He is expected to sign it," the representative said. Sarah felt a wave of emotion wash over her. The bill was going to become law. Because of what happened to her, there would now be more accountability and transparency in how police conducted traffic stops. It would not solve everything, but it was a step in the right direction. "Thank you for all your work on this. I could not have done it without you," the representative said. Thank you for listening and for taking action, Sarah replied. That evening, Sarah sat down with her children and told them about the new law. So because of what happened to you, things are going to change? Maya asked. Yes, not everything, but some things. It is a start, Sarah said. I think that is really cool, Mom, Jordan said. Sarah hugged both of her children. She thought about all the people who had supported her along the way, the witnesses who came forward, the parents who recorded video, Detective Harris who conducted a thorough investigation, Captain Rodriguez who took her complaint seriously, the community members who rallied for change, her commanding officer who supported her mother who encouraged her to fight, her children who inspired her to be brave. Change was possible. It was not easy. It took time and effort and courage, but it was possible. A month later, Sarah was invited to attend the bill signing ceremony at the state capitol. She wore her military uniform. She stood next to the governor as he signed the bill into law. Cameras flashed. Reporters asked questions. Colonel Henderson, how do you feel today? One reporter asked. I feel hopeful. I feel like my experience, as difficult as it was, led to something positive. This law will help protect people from racial profiling. It will create accountability. It will make a difference, Sarah said. Do you have any message for Officer Davies? Another reporter asked. Sarah paused. She had thought about Officer Davies many times over the past few months. She had felt anger toward him. She had felt hurt by his actions. But she had also come to understand that he was a product of a system that needed change. I hope that Officer Davies learns from this experience. I hope that he examines his own biases and works to be a better officer. I hope that he treats everyone he encounters with respect and dignity, regardless of their race or background. And I hope that what happened to me helps him understand the impact his actions can have on people's lives, Sarah said. That evening, as Sarah drove home from the Capitol, she thought about the journey she had been on. It had started with a simple parking violation on a chaotic Tuesday morning. It had led to a confrontation with prejudice and injustice, and it had ended with real change and new laws. But Sarah knew the work was not done. There would be other incidents. There would be other people who faced discrimination. There would be other battles to fight. This was not a finish line. It was just one milestone in a longer journey toward justice and equality. When Sarah arrived home, she found her mother's car in the driveway. Her mother had come to visit. Inside, her mother, Maya, and Jordan were all in the kitchen making dinner together. There she is, the woman of the hour, her mother said, pulling Sarah into a hug. They all sat down to dinner together. They talked and laughed. They told stories. For a little while, Sarah was just a daughter, a mother, a person enjoying time with her family. Later that night, after her mother had gone home and the children were asleep, Sarah went for a walk in her neighborhood. The streets were quiet. The stars were bright in the clear winter sky. She thought about privilege. She had the privilege of being a colonel, which gave her credibility and influence. She had the privilege of education, which helped her navigate the legal system. She had the privilege of resources, which allowed her to fight back without worrying about losing her job or her home. Not everyone had those privileges. Not everyone could speak up the way she did. Some people faced retaliation. Some people could not afford lawyers. Some people did not have video evidence or witnesses. That is why her fight mattered. She was fighting not just for herself, but for all those people who could not fight for themselves. She was using her voice and her position to create change that would help everyone. Sarah looked up at the stars and made a promise to herself. She would continue to use her voice. She would continue to fight for justice. She would continue to stand up against discrimination wherever she saw it. Because that is what soldiers do. They protect. They serve. They fight for what is right. And that is what mothers do. They teach their children. They show them by example. They create a better world for the next generation. Sarah took a deep breath of the cold night air and smiled. Yes, the incident with Officer Davies had been painful and frustrating. But it had also been a turning point. It had led to change. It had led to growth. It had led to hope. And hope, Sarah thought, was the most powerful thing of all.